Good evening and welcome everyone to this evening's program featuring General Amir Avivi together with Moshe Davis. I'm Rabbi Adam Cutler, Senior Rabbi at Adath Israel Congregation, and it is our pleasure to be one of the partners to bring you this program tonight. A special thank you to General Avivi and to Moshe Davis who are joining us, unfortunately not in person, but we totally understand that you can't be here, and we're grateful that you have decided to be up in the middle of the night in Israel at the end of a very long and difficult day to be with us this evening. Adath Israel is a growing, thriving conservative synagogue in Midtown Toronto. Over the course of the last year, we welcomed almost 100 new family units. In the course of the last 24 days, we've had 13 B'nai Mitzvah. Our commitment to Israel is strong and everlasting, as you can tell from tonight's program, and also includes the welcoming of two new rabbis from Israel, Rabbis Nava and Yerach Meyersdorf. Tonight's program will be full of information. It'll be full of insider knowledge. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a broader and deeper understanding of the conflict that is now absorbing Israel and the surrounding region. It's my pleasure now to welcome Andrea Spindle from CAF to share a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi Cutler. Good evening, everyone, and welcome on behalf of the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation and our many participating co-sponsors. Special thanks to Adath Israel Congregation, our host, which partnered with our organization and invited other organizations to also participate. While we all looked forward to being in the synagogue and hearing our guests in person and meeting them and spending time talking with them, it is not less valuable to meet virtually and to acknowledge the critical situation in Israel, which requires the expertise of our guest to be in Israel. CAF is always pleased to collaborate with the synagogue, and today our collaboration is extremely important as we join with the Israel Defense and Security Forum for this important program. Together and through everyone's presence, we are standing up for Israel, declaring ourselves proud Zionists, and learning how we might do more for the Jewish state and Jews globally. It is my honor to introduce today's moderator, whom I've had the pleasure of meeting personally in Jerusalem, and who may be a household name to many of you as he hosts a daily webinar for Habifanistim, the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Moshe Davis is the Director of International Operations for IDSF and the English language public spokesperson. He made Aliyah a few years ago after 20 years working with Jewish organizations in North America and has been part of IDSF almost since its inception. For 11 months, he has kept us informed and alert to the many serious issues facing Israel, such that we feel we have a front row seat to both tragedy and the heroism in Israel. It gives me great pleasure to call upon Moshe Davis to introduce our guest speaker, Brigadier General Amir Avivi, and after General Avivi speaks, Moshe will moderate a Q&A session. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Anna. Thank you to the entire Adath community for hosting this webinar this evening. It's really a huge disappointment that we're not with you in person. We have so many friends in Toronto, so many partners of our organization that we were really looking forward to being with you there in person. And we're already planning the actual next step when we'll make it to Toronto, hopefully in the end of October. As Andrea mentioned, many of you know us from our daily war briefings, where we do everything we can to bring you behind the headlines what is happening here in Israel. And very often when people think about IDSF in Toronto or elsewhere, they think that we're a news source. And we try to be a news source, but it's really important to understand that we're much more than that. We are a national security NGO here in Israel, standing independent of the government, standing independent of the military, and really standing up for what Israel needs for decisive victory. And therefore, when there is a war here in Israel, General Avivi is needed here in Israel. So despite our interests, of course, to be abroad, to be with you in person this evening, General Avivi is fighting for Israel. He is making sure that we achieve decisive victory and that we are all safe. I'll just let everyone know, if you haven't joined our briefings, I would encourage you to sign up. You can see in the window here, there's a QR code. And if you sign up for the briefing this evening, we have a special QR code here for Toronto. We're going to be doing a little giveaway. And I was hoping to be with you in person. We have all of these really nice T-shirts that say IDSF Canada on them. If you sign up for the briefing during this webinar, we're going to pull a bunch of those names, and we're going to send you off your own IDSF Canada shirt. And then with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I bring you Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF.
Thank you very much, Moshe. Thank you, Rabbi Cutler, Anita, Andrea. Always happy to see you. Sorry for not being with you guys in Canada, but the moment we understood that it's clear that we're going to a full-scale war was needed here, we consult very closely the Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense. We empower the society. We visit the towns, the municipalities, and strengthen everybody. And this is why it's so important for us to be now in Israel. Just an hour ago, the IDF released that in the last few hours, 1,600 targets were attacked in Lebanon. It reminded me when I was a young officer in the late 90s, when we saw the US presenting a new concept, a new military doctrine, and they called it, I hope I said it right in English, shock and awe. And the idea was to develop capabilities that are able to really shake the enemy in a way that it cannot understand what's happening. Everything happens very fast and in a very powerful way, in different ways that completely take the enemy out of his comfort zone, and with the feeling that he needs to really stop, and he has lost control of the situation. And I think this is exactly what Israel is doing to Hezbollah, and in ways that really are unimaginable. When you look at Viper's attack, 4,000 people targeted simultaneously while listening to a message, and the device explodes, followed by another big explosion of communication equipment in different apartments in different places, in the different headquarters, followed by the toppling of basically almost all the leadership of Hezbollah, a part of Nasrallah himself. And even today, the number 2 of Hezbollah was targeted, but Hezbollah says he was not killed. But the level of penetration, the level of intelligence, the IDF, Mossad, are really exercising is shocking. I think the whole world is looking at what Israel is doing. And, you know, I've been in many prominent positions. I was, among other things, the camp of the Chief of General Staff. I've seen really special capabilities and operations. Even I'm surprised by the ability of Israel, even without moving one soldier beyond the Israeli border into Lebanon, to create a reality that an organization like Hezbollah is really hit in a way that might endanger the organization existentially. It doesn't mean that everything is going to go smoothly. It doesn't mean that we won't see difficult moments. But certainly, it's very encouraging and very surprising to see what the IDF is able to do in Lebanon. So obviously this raises the question, okay, so why did we wait 11 months if we have all these capabilities? And the answer is that on the 7th of October, when the war started in a very surprising way and shocking and disastrous, talking about Hamas attack, 1,200 people killed, raped, heads of children decapitated, people burned alive, hostages taken. At that stage, when Israel needed to decide what would be the strategy, there was a clear understanding that due to lack of munitions that were not bought, and we didn't have enough, lack of forces because the IDF has closed many reserve units throughout the last 2 decades, bringing us to a reality where we cannot fight on both fronts simultaneously. Israel decided on the 7th of October to be on the defense on all fronts. And we're facing 7 different fronts, and on the offensive in Gaza. Why? Because this is where the hostages are. Hamas attacked us, and we understood that we really need to first deal with Hamas, setting very clear goals of war, eradicating Hamas as a governmental military entity, bringing back all the hostages, and creating a reality in Gaza that never again there will be a terror army in the Gaza Strip. And so at the beginning of the war, we didn't know if a full-scale war will erupt or not on the Lebanese border. So we sent many units north to prevent a full-scale war. And we operated at the beginning in Gaza with only 3 divisions. This is why the first step was a ground incursion in the northern part of Gaza. The northern part of Gaza is the strongest brigade of Hamas and also the center of government. So this is why the IDF operated first there. And once we took over the whole north of Gaza, and we also understood that in the north there is a war, but not a full-scale war, we started moving more and more units south and extended the ground incursion into the central part of Gaza and the southern part of Gaza, Khan Yunis. In Khan Yunis, it was a very interesting battle. 7 brigades under 1 division, Division 98, attacked Khan Yunis. And 3-4 days after we started operating, it was crystal clear that if we don't fight underground, we cannot destroy Hamas. Thousands and thousands of terrorists in tunnels underground, and we had to fight, and we developed techniques how to go into the tunnels, how to overcome booby traps, improvised explosive devices, how to overcome blast doors that they placed in every corner, how to fight, and this changed the whole warfare in Gaza. And Division 98 ended up conquering huge parts of the underground infrastructure of Khan Yunis and destroying the Khan Yunis brigade. It was very clear that we needed to go into Rafah and take control of the Egyptian border. Endless amount of weapons of know-how have moved from the Sinai Peninsula into Gaza through the Philadelphia corridor, above and underground. And we needed to take control of the border with Egypt and Gaza, and also destroy the Rafah brigade. We suffered huge pressure from the US administration not to do so, even going so far as saying to Israel, if you go into Rafah, we won't give you munitions anymore. And the answer of the Prime Minister when he talked with President Biden was, if we need to conquer Rafah with our nails, we'll do so. And indeed, we went into Rafah, we took Philadelphia corridor, and took 2 3 months to destroy the Rafah brigade. Again, endless amount of tunnels, whole neighborhoods booby-trapped, huge amounts of explosives, thousands and thousands of terrorists. And we did it really fast, taking in consideration how complicated and challenging the warfare in Gaza is. At this stage, I would say a month ago, Israel created the terms needed to reach the goals of war in Gaza, to destroy Hamas. All the brigades of Hamas were dismantled. I mean, look at what's going on as we are fighting in Lebanon. Not a single rocket was shot from Gaza. When we targeted Muhammad Deif, the chief of staff of Hamas, not a single rocket was shot at Israel. So this is how bad the situation is of Hamas. I remember when we used to do targeting of some major operative in Hamas, Hamas would have told us, okay, at the 8 o'clock in the evening, we are going to shoot Tel Aviv, and everybody was waiting to see when this is going to happen. We're not there anymore. Hamas is not posing a threat on Israel. Yes, there are terrorists still scattered in Gaza. Yes, they have some capabilities, but Israel destroyed all their industries inside Gaza. We closed the Egyptian border in a way they cannot renew themselves. Everything they shoot, that's it. They don't have any more munitions. And we see from the intelligence we're getting that their capabilities are degrading constantly. And we're moving towards the complete destruction of their military capabilities. They are still controlling the society. Hamas is controlling the Gazan society, but we're now starting to implement the next steps, taking control of the humanitarian aid and making sure that also the civil control, the governmental control of Hamas will be destroyed. So now that we are moving units north, the pace in which we're destroying Hamas is maybe a bit slower, but in Gaza, we are still on the offensive. We are still attacking, we're still working, and we're still keeping the terms that will make sure that Hamas cannot renew itself, and we continue to destroy them constantly. So a month ago, we met with the Prime Minister and then with the Minister of Defense, and we presented a very detailed document saying, this is the moment. We need to shift the center of gravity from Gaza to the north and create the terms needed to return back our 60,000 displaced civilians that we need to bring back safely home. We need to rebuild many of these homes, and we need to create a reality that they will be safe for generations, not just for a year or two, and then having to displace them again. We need to change the whole reality in the northern part of the country, and it's very clear that creating these terms require two main things. One is the complete withdrawal of Hezbollah from South Lebanon. We cannot have a terror army on our borders, endangering the society and potentially creating a reality as we saw on the 7th of October in the south. No Israeli citizen would agree ever again to live on a border that on the other side you have a terror army that can potentially invade. This is a reality Israel cannot accept anymore. Therefore, we cannot have a terror army in South Lebanon. The other issue, of course, is hitting Hezbollah in a way that will really set them back dramatically for many, many years, toppling their leadership, destroying their capabilities. And this is exactly what the IDF is doing now. So the strategy that was chosen in Lebanon at the moment is a strategy of very, very powerful, continuous attack with many different means, degrading their capabilities, toppling all the leadership, which is almost all of the leadership of Hezbollah almost has been destroyed. And I'm sure that the IDF will do everything to reach Nasrallah and kill him too. And as we are going forward with these plans, wait and see whether Hezbollah at a certain moment says, okay, that's it. We want a ceasefire, we will retreat and take our forces out of South Lebanon, according to Resolution 1701, or we need to do a ground incursion. The Northern Command is in full readiness to go into South Lebanon and destroy Hezbollah there and also all their capabilities in South Lebanon. But we're not going to do it before we really degrade dramatically their capabilities. At the moment, although we're attacking fiercely everywhere, Hezbollah hasn't responded seriously yet. I think that in the last day they shot what would be the average shooting they did in the last year, around 200 rockets. I think they're very confused and they are considering what to do. I would assume that they will shoot further away and maybe try to shoot Tel Aviv or other places, but time will tell. At the moment, I think also the Iranians are very surprised. They have been planning to attack us for a long time, but it's not happening. And they're seeing really Hezbollah being destroyed, and they're not really reacting. We had some shooting from Iraq, from Yemen, from Syria, but not on a large scale. And at least talking about the last 2-3 days, everything that's happening has really, really empowered the Israeli society. Everybody is very proud. This is who we are. This is Am Israel. This is the IDF and the Mossad. This is what we really are able to do. And I think that the whole world is seeing these capabilities and really being very, very surprised. So Moshe, I'm sure there are many, many questions. So I hand it back to you. And let's talk.
Thank you, General. A lot of you have sent in some really, really good questions. We have a very educated crowd here. Some of you are sending in the questions in the Q&A. Others are sending it in the chat. Either one works. So however you want to get the questions in, we'll go through them. And of course, a reminder, if you sign up now, we'll pull from the people who signed up and send you all a nice little t-shirt, IDSF Canada. A lot of you have signed up already, which is amazing, and keep it coming and you'll get these briefings every day. Okay, General, let's start with this first question that came in. What is the operational goal of the current war in the north? Is it to destroy Hezbollah like Hamas is being destroyed? Or is it just to force the enemy to come to the negotiation table and ultimately sign some type of agreement?
So I think that unlike Gaza, that is a very small area which we can completely contain as we did. We closed Philadelphia, we closed the whole Gaza Strip. We're containing the Gaza Strip and we're able to really actually destroy completely Hamas as a military and governmental entity. Lebanon is a completely different scenario. Israel doesn't intend to conquer all of Lebanon, occupy it, and destroy completely Hezbollah. Our goals are to make sure Hezbollah is going to be destroyed in South Lebanon, that are not going to be there, and also hit them dramatically. But I must say that surprisingly, even to me, just by really having this accurate intelligence and the targeting that the IDF is doing on the leadership of Hezbollah, we're actually bringing them on the verge of destruction, which is amazing. I mean, if we take out Nasrallah and maybe one or two left leading figures of Hezbollah in Lebanon, and this organization might collapse, which is something I didn't expect to see in the way it's happening at the moment. So it will be very interesting to see how things move in the coming days as the war is intensifying. We have to remember also that in Lebanon, there are many, many enemies of Hezbollah. It's not Gaza. Gaza is Hamas. The society of Gaza is Hamas. In Lebanon, this is not the case. There are Christians, Maronis, Druze, Sunnis. Most of them hate Hezbollah. And when they see Hezbollah weakened to such an extent, when they see the miseries that Hezbollah brought to Lebanon, even before the war, certainly now, today we saw hundreds of thousands of Lebanese fleeing the cities in the south of Lebanon, and then also big areas north of the Litani due to IDF attacks. And the IDF told the people to move from the houses because every single weapon that we are targeting is in a civilian house. And the IDF called the whole society to move out. There are many, many, many Lebanese displaced. Already before the war, the economy of Lebanon was destroyed. They hardly have electricity, maybe an hour or two a day. So as we are really degrading their capabilities and toppling the leadership of Hezbollah, we start seeing people in Lebanon more emboldened, and maybe we'll see the Lebanese society rising against Hezbollah. This might be an interesting development.
We know that the war in Gaza has been incredibly complex, largely due to the very elaborate tunnel system in Gaza. General, can you speak to the tunnels that Hezbollah has constructed in Lebanon?
So Hezbollah is also using many tunnels. This is one of the reasons why it's important to do a ground incursion in South Lebanon, to really find these tunnels and destroy them, just as we are doing in Gaza. I think that when the IDF now is arriving to Lebanon to deal with Hezbollah, really the capabilities that have been developed in the last 11 months, the experience of the units, and especially the combat engineers and the special unit of the combat engineers, Yalom, that has doubled itself in the last 11 months with many, many new capabilities that were purchased. We're really arriving to this stage with huge, huge experience. And in this sense, of course, it's a huge advantage of the IDF now when facing Hezbollah.
General, I have to personally apologize for the next question because we've done so many briefings. I've asked you this question so many times, you probably think I just don't know the answer, but I'm asking it because it keeps coming in. If Hezbollah is pushed back north of the Litani River, what will deter them from just firing north of the Litani River and using their 100,000 plus rockets that they have anyway?
So Israel can be shot from Iran, from Iraq, from Syria, from Yemen, places that are really, really far away. And also Hezbollah has capabilities that are hundreds of kilometers, and we're not going to conquer hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kilometers in order to make sure that from nowhere in the Middle East we can be shot. Israel will always be under some kind of danger of rockets or missiles being shot or drones. So really the way to make sure that they don't shoot is hit them in a way that will really make sure that for many, many, many years, they won't want a war. So toppling the whole leadership, this is a good idea. Really destroying most of the capabilities in a way that it will take them years and years and years to build themselves if at all they will be able to do it without leadership. It's a good idea. So really, when we are talking about the terms needed to bring back the citizens safely to their homes, we're talking about ground invasion, about the danger of ground invasion, not about the question of the rockets. Of course, if there are some rockets left in Lebanon, they can shoot them. But I think that there will be a moment where Hezbollah will beg for some kind of ceasefire. And if there will be Hezbollah, if we won't kill all the leadership, which might happen at this stage. It reminds me, Moshe, at the time I was deputy division commander in the Gaza Strip, and I had many delegations that came and wanted to know what's going on in Gaza. And we used to stand in a site called Black Arrow in the northern part, overlooking the Gaza Strip. And each time it was the same. I was a colonel at the time. They would ask me, Colonel, what's going on in Gaza? And no matter what really went on in Gaza, I always answered the same answer. I said, basically since the days of the judges in the Bible, nothing changed. Each time the Gazans launch an attack, we bring the people, we fight them back again and again. Remember the stories of Samson. But after many, many battles and wars between the people of Israel and the Gazans, at the end of the book of Judges says, and the land was quiet for 40 years. Now rabbis asked, why say that? Why is it important that the Bible would state that the land was quiet for 40 years? And the answer is that 40 years of quiet in the land of Israel is an event of biblical dimension. Never happened in 4,000 years. So now it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to create this reality and make sure that this time when we defeat our enemies, we'll enjoy many, many years of quiet. And I've said many times in the last 11 months, something that I think finally the people of Israel and the Jewish people around the world can see, that we can win decisively on all fronts, that we are able to win. And I can say that the bigger the win will be, the more decisive it will be, the greater the golden age of Israel and the Jewish people will be the day after. The day after this war, there will be peace agreements, and we'll see the economy blooming, and we'll have massive aliyah to Israel, and there's going to be also baby boom. All this awaits Israel and the Jewish people. All we need to do, stay united, fight, and win decisively, and really change the future for our children.
Wow, thank you. I feel like we should have ended off with that question. That was definitely an inspirational thought. And I'm curious to know, and some people are asking about anti-Semitism. You quoted the Bible and the inevitability of unrest and the enemies of Israel fighting us. I'm curious to know what you think the role is or the place of anti-Semitism, the rise in anti-Semitism that we're seeing. Is this just a rehash of those very same stories in the Bible and it's inevitable? Or is there a solution that as a general in the army you have?
So when we wrote our national security assessments 2 years ago, and we said to the government and the army, war is imminent. In the next 2 years, there will be a war. And we talked about what Israel and the Jewish people are facing and what are our national security challenges. We talked about everything that we're seeing now, Iran and all its proxies. We talked about the Israeli-Arab conflict and what's going on inside the land of Israel. We talked also about the internal challenges we have as a society, but we also talked at length about delegitimation and anti-Semitism and what a danger this is. And indeed, following this national security assessment, I decided for the public to write a book that really covers all these issues. And I mentioned this because the book was published in English this week. And it's available on Amazon. I'm sure Moshe will share the details. And then there in the book, when I talk about anti-Semitism, I also talk about solutions. Or I would say a strategy, how to deal with anti-Semitism. And I really think that when we deal with anti-Semitism, the less important thing to deal with is the anti-Semites themselves. They're not going to change. It's really about empowering our own people, really concentrating on educating the Jewish people. Because what our enemies are doing, they're trying to take the biggest story ever told in human history, the story of the Jewish people, and completely reverse it. You know, in every single story, in every good story, especially a nation story, there is a hero and there is a villain. And what our enemies are trying to do is make us our villains in our own story. And we're not villains in our own story, we're the heroes of our own story. And the story needs to be kept coherent. There is only one truth. And the truth is that we are the people of Israel. And we're living in the land of Israel. This is our land. We lived here for generations. We were expelled from our land and we came back to take it and to resettle it. And this is our story. And it's holistic. Cannot break it into pieces. And I think one of the challenges that the Jewish people need to learn is how to detach between the values, which are holistic, and problem solving. I myself, as the son of a diplomat, a very well-known ambassador in Israel, I really enjoy thinking about solutions. I wrote in my book 4 different solutions for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. All of them, by the way, don't undermine Israel's existence as security or values. But I don't go about talking about solutions from a point of view that says that we are occupiers in our own land. No, it's clear to me that we are the people of Israel and this is our land. But it doesn't mean that I cannot think about practical solutions to the complex reality that we are facing. So really, I think we really need to empower our own people, get them to be excited again about what it is to be a Jew and an Israeli, and have, as we say in the army, units pride, build our resilience as a society. Thank you, Moshe.
Thank you, General. I'm so happy you mentioned your book. I'm putting in the Zoom chat the link for your book that was just published. It just came out right this week. So it could be that our friends in Toronto will be the first to really all be able to purchase it from Amazon. Okay, General, many people are asking about the hostages in Gaza. This turn of events that Israel's now more focused on the north than Gaza, what does that mean for the hostages? What is the plan to rescue the hostages?
So unfortunately, we're dealing with a reality that Hamas is simply not interested at all to release hostages. We have tried to negotiate for months and months. Hamas is demanding something we cannot agree to, which is the end of the war. Their whole strategy is about surviving, staying in power. We cannot allow Hamas to stay in power. We're willing to have a hostage deal where we stop for a month or a month and a half, exchange hostages and the Palestinian prisoners, and go back to fight Hamas, as we did in the previous hostage deal. But Hamas at this stage is not willing to have this kind of solution. And therefore, it really leaves us with one main option. And this is releasing our hostages by destroying Hamas, bringing them down. And we have a lot of tools how to do it. And among other things is taking control of the humanitarian aid, making sure Hamas cannot get humanitarian aid anymore, but just the Palestinians that are not fighters, bringing down Hamas as a governmental entity, disconnecting the Palestinian society from Hamas, and this way getting them to cooperate with us, point where Hamas leaders are bringing our hostages back. Many of them are in families under clans that are controlling them. So we need to really realize what is the viable strategy to release our hostages. And if there will be a change, if at a certain point Hamas will be pressured enough that they will be willing to stop for a month in order to organize, and it will be worthwhile for them to do a hostage deal, and the hostage deal will happen. But it's not at the moment the strategy that Hamas is pursuing.
Okay, let's go back to discussing the war in the north. Are you able to give us a little bit of background about the status of the Lebanese army and the role of the civilians in Lebanon potentially creating some unrest and pushing back against Hezbollah?
So there is a Lebanese army, but it cannot really confront Hezbollah. Hezbollah is basically controlling the whole country. It's controlling the government. It's the most powerful organization inside Lebanon, a state within a state. It's also pretty much controlling the Lebanese army. And it's not going to change until we really bring down this organization or weaken it in a way that the Lebanese can deal with this. And this is what we are doing now. I wouldn't build on the Lebanese army to be able to control South Lebanon and prevent terrorists from being there. And they're not really able to do that. And we see that also UNIFIL, the UN forces are completely ineffective. So there is a big question, which I don't have an answer. How do we enforce a reality where Hezbollah is not in South Lebanon without the IDF being there? And maybe there is no answer. We need to be there for a very long time. It's a reality that doesn't have a clear answer.
Okay, a lot of people want to know about Iran, that Iran is clearly behind much or all of what is happening. To what extent does Israel need to directly target Iran?
So I think it's an historical opportunity to deal with Iran, to deal with their nuclear program. We cannot have a reality where Iran will become nuclear. And there is a moment now in history that we might be able to deal with this. When I talked about the national security assessment we presented at the time, remember, Moshe, we put on the cover of this national security assessment a picture of a frog being boiled in a pot. And we said, this is Israel. Israel is facing many challenges, and if we are not going to deal with them, we're going to be boiled inside this pot until we'll really face an existential threat. And I think that what happened on the 7th of October is that on one hand, it was one of the most devastating, terrible days the Jewish people have ever had. But at the same time, something else happened. This frog jumped out of the pot, and now it's outside. And basically, I would say God gave us an opportunity, woke us up and said, dear Jews, wake up. You are going the wrong way, and this is the way to the destruction. You need to deal with your problems. And what we in IDSF are really making sure is that Israel goes towards a path of victory and never again returning this frog back to the pot. And not returning the frog to the pot, it's not just destroying Hamas, it's not just really destroying or hitting very hard Hezbollah and changing the whole reality in the north. It's also dealing with the terror in Judea and Samaria in a completely different way and on a completely different scale. But it's also dealing with Iran. It's also dealing with these nuclear threats. And I think if we manage to do all these things, and we can do all these things, even if it takes a bit of time, we will change completely the reality for the next generations. And this is why this is so important. Now, at the moment, by destroying Hamas and Hezbollah, we are really creating a reality that Iran is going to be completely exposed to a possible Israeli attack or a coalition's attack. And they won't have the tools to retaliate seriously against Israel. And I think it's Israel's goal to really get the US to show leadership. It's going to be very, very dramatic who will be the next president in the US. We need a strong US. We need a US that is willing to fight, that understands the challenges. I can say that I'm in contact with I would say all the leading think tanks in Washington that write the policy papers for the Republican Party. All of them suggest a policy that includes a military attack on Iran. This is the reality, and we know that unfortunately on the Democratic side, it's about appeasement, it's about a completely different policy, and we need strengths. Not only us, the whole globe needs strengths. We are dealing with a Russian, Chinese, Iranian front that is operating in the Middle East, in Europe, in Africa. We cannot deal with this front without strengths and without building a coalition, a Western Israeli moderate Sunni coalition that will be able to stand strong against this front that has emerged in the last few years.
Thank you, General, and thank you everyone who keeps sending in these questions. We have more time, and the General is giving his time to us graciously, so we're going to keep going. The book is in the chat, so anyone who wants to purchase it on Amazon is welcome to do so. And okay, so General, let me ask you a question. We know that in terms of the IDF operations in Gaza, the U.S. had heavy influence in terms of the timing and the stages of the war. Is there a concern that the U.S. will again have a very heavy influence in the IDF operations in Lebanon?
Well, I think it's already having an influence because following the 4 southern terrorists that were targeted, many people in Israel expected immediately a full-scale attack and ground incursion into Lebanon. I think that one of the reasons that Israel is doing the war or conducting the war in Lebanon in a way that it's step by step and giving a chance to Hezbollah to ask for a ceasefire, to surrender, to retreat before we have to go into Lebanon is building legitimacy internationally and with the US, because the US really, really doesn't want a full-scale ground incursion into Lebanon. And we are doing things in a way that say, okay, we're doing our best to maybe avoid it, but Hezbollah is not willing to retreat willingly, then we'll have no choice. We'll have to do that. And the best time to do it is now, before the elections. So this is the situation.
Okay, in terms of a buffer zone in Lebanon, between Lebanon and Israel, is there a hope that ultimately that is created and then a UN peacekeeping force maintains that buffer zone? Meaning, what is the ultimate goal to restore calm to the north of Israel?
I think that realistically speaking, the only force that can keep a buffer zone like that is Israel. And I think that when we bring back our citizens to the north, when they look north, they need to see the IDF, not Hezbollah. It's very hard for me to think about a viable solution at the moment for a replacement for the IDF, for somebody else who will be in this buffer zone. We've seen how ineffective these international forces are. We know that inside Lebanon, you don't have any serious force that can deal with this unless Hezbollah completely collapses or there is some really basic change that will create a new reality. But if we're talking about this reality, I think the only option that I can see at the moment is the IDF.
Okay, I'm going to try to consolidate a couple questions with this next one. General, are you able to explain how there's a general such as yourself who has such a reasonable, understandable approach to dealing with our enemies here in the Middle East, and then many of the viewers of this webinar turn on different TV channels and news sources, and they hear other Israeli leaders with a drastically different vision of how to deal with our enemies, and they want to understand how can it be that two people rise through the ranks of the IDF, are in leadership positions, and then come to drastically different conclusions about the direction of the country?
Well, I think that we're dealing with two worldviews. One that says, okay, we've been fighting for almost a year. Let's get it over with. Let's do a ceasefire. Let's concentrate just on bringing back our hostages. Let's do a ceasefire, a long one. And if we do this ceasefire in Gaza, then Hezbollah will say, okay, we're not shooting anymore. We'll do a ceasefire also. And then this is the reality and there is no war in the north, we'll bring back our citizens. And then if we really keep things quiet and the administration will be really happy, maybe we'll get a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. And looks great, sounds great, everything is quiet. But the reality is that basically this path is taking back the frog and putting it back to be boiled inside the pot. Why? Because Hamas will stay in power. While this ceasefire will continue, they will rebuild themselves from scratch. In a year, we'll find them full power again, endangering again the south of Israel and all of Israel again, with rockets and commando forces. Hezbollah will stay in power in full strength in South Lebanon. All our regional deterrents will be destroyed because if we, as a society, don't deal seriously with an organization that massacred 1,200 people, that raped our women, that burned people alive, that decapitated children, heads, how can we survive in this in the Middle East? And it's very hard to understand, for me at least. People think like that, I can just stop and that's it, and let's buy some time. I can say, and I wrote about it in the book, that one of the things that happened to the leadership of Israel, both the military and the government, the leadership embraced a strategy that the US pursued for many, many years, successfully, by the way, a strategy of containment. In the end of the Second World War, when the US had to deal with USSR, they decided to embrace the strategy of containment, not letting the USSR expand, not fighting them directly, but fighting in places where they tried to expand, like Vietnam or Korea. And then they also did a military and space race, knowing that the USSR economically won't be able to sustain that. And indeed, in the end of the 90s, the USSR collapsed. In the end of the 80s, collapsed without a bullet being shot at them. And this containment strategy was a huge success. And when this happened, two worldviews were brought to the world. One was Fukuyama, who wrote his famous book, The End of History, saying, that's it, the USSR fell, the US is the only force, big force in the world, a democracy, and now all the world will be democratic, and democracies don't fight between each other. We are on our way to world peace. The Messiah in the form of democracy has descended to earth, and world peace is coming. And the professor of Fukuyama read the book, was shocked, said to Fukuyama, listen, you didn't listen to my lessons at all. And he wrote another book called The Class of Civilizations, written by Huntington. And Huntington said, yes, it's true that the USSR fell, but this is not going to be world peace. We are going to witness a clash between civilizations, Islam, West, China, Russia, Africa, everything is going to clash. And since then, all of us are divided into these two worldviews. People who look at the world and say, we just need to fix some things and there is world peace. And people who look at the world and say, God, we're on the verge of Third World War. And this is what we see also in the defense establishment. We see Huntingtons and we see Fukuyamas. And I think that we want to really strive and be successful. We need our feet on the ground, looking at reality as it is, and our heads in the sky, seeking great visions and where we want to go. But we need to connect to reality. We're not about to have world peace. We are experiencing a clash of civilizations.
All right, General, thank you. Toronto, thank you so much for allowing us to share this with you, for doing this event virtually, what we weren't able to do in person. But General, we're going to be in Toronto in October, right?
Definitely, sure.
So everyone who's joined
the
this,
opportunity to see you all in person.
absolutely. If you're joining this Zoom now, make sure to stay on the lookout for our plans to come in October. We're very much looking forward to seeing everyone in person. And if you have not yet signed up for our briefings, you can see the QR code on the screen, the link on the screen. And after this briefing, we're going to pick some of the names who signed up and get you some really awesome Canadian IDSF shirts. Thank you to Adath, to Andrea, to Anita, to the rabbi. And I'm going to turn it over now to Rabbi Nava. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. תודה רבה, גנרל אביבי, ותודה רבה, משה דייוויס.
Pleasure. Thank you.
As an Israeli rabbi who really sees this connection between the Jews in Israel and the Jews in this diaspora, and when we only receive the news from Israel in the news, this is so meaningful for us to see so many people gather here tonight, even when we were hoping so much to sit together, and we can agree or disagree, but the fact that we want to hear and to explore together. So I want to suggest that we'll pray together now with the praying of Acheinu. So in your heart and in your voices, wherever you are. Acheinu kol Beit Israel. Acheinu kol Beit Israel. הנתונים בצרה ובשביה, העומדים בין בים ובין ביבשה. המקום ירחם, ירחם עליהם ויוציאם מצרה לרווחה, ומאפלה לאורה ומשעבוד לגאולה השתה בגלה ובזמן קריב. תודה רבה.
Bye-bye. Wonderful.
לילה טוב ובוקר טוב to you.